All right, guys. So last time I went over diabetes. This time we are tying in how diabetes leads to cardiac issues. Sorry, my hand is shaky. Had a lot of coffee. But we're going into how diabetes. So if you watched the last video, we talked about diabetes and we said that diabetes will eventually lead to cardiovascular issues, right? So let's talk about that. So first off, let's talk about diabetes. Let's go ahead and review that. So with diabetes, what we have is we have someone that most likely had a overconsumption or overconsumes carbs. So that would be too much breads, too much rice, too much processed foods, especially this one. This one's a no. Sugars as well. So if you have any sugars, too much sugar is very bad. If you could exterminate sugar from your system, do. It's good to, taste it every now and then just to remember what it's like. But don't make it a habit. All right. So again, diabetes is somebody that has overconsumed breads, rice, processed foods, and especially sugars. So these carbs, once they go through the digestive system, will be converted into glucose. Glucose is a fancy word for sugar. Okay? So your body makes its own sugar, and that is why we do not need sugar. Now, all that extra glucose, if you have too much glucose because you eat too much of these, will be converted into fat. So all fat is stored, it's storages of glucose. So if you have too much glucose, it's going to be stored in your body as fat. Now that fat is going to build around your organs, so your heart's an organ. So you'll start having fat around the organs. That fat is stored everywhere, even inside the vessels. Okay? So these are vessels that go around the heart, that supply the heart. They're called coronary arteries. So that's how diabetes eventually will develop into some sort of cardiovascular disease. Okay? Now, fat stored as reserve. This is good if you plan on going hunting, or you have to be somewhere where you might not be able to eat. Then it's okay to overconsume because you're preparing for something, right? But besides that, if we're not in a situation where we're limited on food, then we just want to have a strict diet and not consume too many carbs. Okay, so let's briefly go over the anatomy of the heart. Your heart has 4 chambers. These are the names. Those are not important right now. What's important is that diabetes will eventually turn into cardiovascular disease, also known as coronary artery disease, also known as atherosclerosis. These are all the exact same thing. They are interchangeable, and all these mean is that you have digested so much glucose that now you have pockets of fat primarily in your coronary arteries. Your coronary arteries are the vessels that feed the heart itself. So they will wrap around the heart to supply the heart itself with the oxygen that it needs to keep you alive. Okay? So why is this an issue? Well, this is what leads to heart attacks. This is what leads to a heart attack. The best way to reduce this is to change your diet. Stop consuming the carbs you don't need. Stop consuming especially sugars. Stop consuming processed foods. These are the killers. These are things that we do not need in our body. These are okay, but in moderation. Everything in moderation. Okay? If you overconsume anything, it's going to affect the body. If it affects the body, it affects the human being. If it affects the human being, it affects the community around the human being, and so on and so forth. Because now we are teaching these bad habits that we should not be having. Okay? We affect our environment. So, that was, long story short, how diabetics will eventually possibly have a heart attack because of that fat storage from too much glucose, too much sugars, right? Well, a heart attack is because these pockets of fat get so big that they occlude all the blood that would be going to a section of the heart. So blood is flowing through these vessels to feed parts of the heart, right? So now if I have a blockage because my diet and my consumption, I was over consuming, and I have a blockage here, now the blood that is carrying the oxygen to this part of the heart is no longer receiving blood, therefore is no longer receiving oxygen, therefore it starts to die off. And now my heart is not pumping as effectively as it should be pumping. And that is going to limit the amount of blood that goes out of the heart through the aorta, which feeds the body with oxygen. So you see how it's all connected? The pumper needs to pump so the body can get the oxygen. If the heart does not get the oxygen, the body does not get the oxygen, you start to die. And it's all tied into what you consume. What you put in your body matters. Limit the bad, reduce the bad, and let's see if I'm missing anything. Please review this one more time. I know it was a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there for now. And then this is your basic anatomy. So the heart is made up of 4 chambers: left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. Anytime we talk about a human body in science, medical, it's gonna be backwards because we are pretending that we are looking at the patient. So the patient's right is my left, right? So this would be my left side because I'm looking at the patient, but it's their right side. This is my right side, but it's their left side. So we have to reference it appropriate to the patient. Okay, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave comments, and I will be adding to the Google Classroom if you are a part of it.